if you do that in a QA or stage context, that page is great. Now you gotta move it to your quote unquote prod instance, which is just a folder in DA and a branch in GitHub and a config bus entry. All of a sudden you're signing up for more work. And so all of a sudden you go into this and you're like, I know what I'm doing. Edge delivery is easy. I hear it's easy. Why is it not that much better? And it's like, well, I got bad news for you. You just brought along a lot of your sort of traditional AEM biases. And so that is like kind of a two-pronged issue, is like, how do we convince folks that this isn't just for baby sites? We need to give you examples. We need to prove to you. Because if all of our marketing is like, look at XYZ blog, look at, it's like that ain't gonna fly. That ain't gonna do. In fact, it's been a huge point of work on our side, and even going into 2026. So that's the thing, is like, so Edge delivery can power Adobe.com. And I've seen Edge delivery, and Adobe.com is still arguably one of the most, especially for its size, pound for pound, it's one of the most creative websites in the world. If you go to the Firefly product page, it's an incredible page built with document-based authoring, highly interactive, all this stuff. And so it's like, you really have to, if you're like, Edge delivery can't do X, I think you really need to look at your own biases. Because I've seen every single type of site. I heard, it was funny. I was on a call showing DA, and somebody's like, you can't do single page applications with Edge delivery services. And I'm like, what is DA? Is DA not a single page application? Because in many ways it is. And so it was funny. It was very, it was like, okay, sure. And that's another thing, is like, if you're not convinced, I'm also a little past the point of like trying to convince folks. Spent a good year, where if you say something, it's like what I tell my kid, if she says something can't be done, well, her mind is already made up.
Oh yeah.
And so like, if you say you can't, you can't.
You're right.
I'm not here, if you're not sort of interested in having a good conversation about this. I think a mutual friend of ours had a really good take. Brett from RxD,
DXRI, yeah.
Yeah. And he's I think he's kind of on record of being, I'm going to put words in his mouth a little bit, Brett, I'm sorry, but a little bit of a Edge delivery skeptic. And we had some really great conversations, and I was like, let me just show you, like, you've seen a lot of stuff from the peripheral. Let me show you a bunch of things in DA. And he's like, he seemed to turn a little bit, and I think his insight was really good, which is like, look, at the end of the day, these are just trade-offs. AEM is going to be better at one thing, and Edge delivery is going to be better at one thing. And so like for him, he was like, it's just a matter of trade-offs. Like, would I, like, if I have this paper cut on AEM and I don't have it on Edge delivery, well, is my project better off with Edge delivery and its sort of flavors of paper cuts, right, versus like the paper cuts of AEM? And I think your customer is a good example of that, where I think they have an internal engineering team of like one or two engineers. And so like the complexity of AEM is the paper cut.
Yes.
The deployment and the Java, HTML, XML, like all of that, like one engineer can't necessarily support that. And so that was the paper cut for them. And so they said, oh, Edge delivery is actually a better fit because we can do everything we need to do. Now, again, paper cut on the Edge delivery side, I need to be able to control server-side markup. That is a hard requirement. There's nothing you can tell me that will ever change my mind. I need server-side markup. And Edge delivery doesn't really support Next.js very well. And AEM, I can do whatever I want, so I'm going to use AEM. And totally fine. But I will say, and this is a key area, like 2025, if I was to roll up like my number one goal in 2025 was make sure DA survives. That was the number one goal because it was still in the cards. It was early access technology. Again, Jan 1, didn't have a single live customer. So my number one goal was make sure DA survives. And that was like, we did things just for pure sales reasons that we would not have maybe done. We did that so we could close a deal or something. There was some pet feature or whatever. There and so like we're good now. Like DA is going to survive.
Yeah. Like, yeah. We're well into that now.
Well, yeah. Like DA is going to survive. Way past the point of early access technology. And so my number one goal for 2026 is to remove any reasonable reason why someone would not choose edge delivery. That's my number one goal, is like remove any sort of reasonable reason why someone would not choose edge delivery. And so we have two very big tentpole features we're researching right now. So in going into 2026, and so because there are still reasonable reasons. What's funny is like one of those, I won't beat around the bush. Like one of those is structured content. We're looking at structured content.
Okay.
And I think it's called content fragments in the AEM world. And this is another one of those, like, check your biases at the door. I don't necessarily have any use for structured content. If I do, I don't know about it, or it's like 0.1% of.
Or you've already solved it in a different way.
It a different way. Yep. And accepted the trade-offs or whatever.
Right.
Touch on that actually. So structured content. And so it's like, we have customers that are like, hey, we want to use structured content. And just from like, again, we do things for sales, or at least to prove a point. Like if somebody comes in and says, well, can you do X? Or I hear edge delivery cannot do X. And that's true. And so even if it's just a research project where I can pull it up, even if we're not shipping it or it's an early access thing, it's like, here's our path to do this. And here's all the research we've done around it.
We could make this prod ready. This isn't necessarily prod ready, but you're not checkmated.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of is sort of how I solve sort of the edge delivery skeptics, if you will.
Well, then let me. I'm going to skip right into a couple of my other MythBusters ones, because I hear this all the time when I'm trying to convince the unconvinced. So one of the other ones, and this is going to get right into like this is almost like somebody cussing at you, but this is folks saying that edge delivery is just a hack for hacking Google Lighthouse scores, and it's built around the whole eager, delayed phases and so forth are all just a hack for an arbitrary target. It's a little mean spirited when one hears that, but what would be your response to something like that?
So I think it's important to know, and this is maybe a dirty secret or a not so dirty and not so secret comment. Lighthouse does not matter.
Yep.
Lighthouse is developer bragging rights. It is it and maybe even executive bragging rights. The thing that matters is core web vitals. So you can pass Lighthouse and fail core web vitals. You can pass core web vitals and fail Lighthouse. Lighthouse does not matter in any sort of material way. Lighthouse is useful to give you as a developer metrics on synthetic metrics to help you get to a good core web vital score, but ultimately a 100 Lighthouse score means absolutely nothing aside from bragging rights.
Mhm.
And it also tells you that somebody framed this really well on Lighthouse, which is like, or on LinkedIn, which is if you have a 100 Lighthouse score, it means that Lighthouse can no longer help you.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you don't have more work to do. It's just that like you've exhausted what Lighthouse can do for you.